Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello to you and welcome back to the channel where you join me today in Goodwood, England with some very traditionally British weather for the UK press launch of the new BMW X5. Today we are going to take a full and thorough look at this car as a few more of them head out for test drives. We have the xDrive 30Ds, we'll be going off-roading later as well to see its capabilities, one just heading out right now. That actually sounds pretty good. And then later on, we will also discover and explore the M50d as well. So let's get started, check out the details before going out for a drive to see what the new X5 is about. The weather at the moment could not be more appropriate for the cars that I'm going to be driving. It's cold, it's wet, and it's windy, but we're here at Goodwood, the home of the annual Festival of Speed, the revival events, the motor circuit. In fact, this is the Goodwood Kennels, and Goodwood House itself is just down behind. We're going to be taking the cars later on their off-roading course, which makes up part of the Festival of Speed. But let's start off with an introduction to the car here. And please do excuse the noise of some cars going past. We are beside a main road, but this is now the fourth generation of the BMW X5. The first gen launched back in 1999, and believe it or not, only 19 years ago, that was BMW's first ever SUV. And since then, with such a hugely fast-paced growing market, they have sold 2.2 million units of them across the three different generations. So no doubt this is going to be a big success going forwards as well. Now, they describe the exterior as powerful and striking. They describe the interior as luxurious and clinical, and I can tell you that this car is a bit of a tech fest. It is loaded with technology, but let's just take a walk around to take in the looks. And one of the first things to talk about is the size of the car, because it has grown quite a lot since the previous generation. In fact, it's now 36 millimeters longer. It's as much as 66 millimeters wider, and it's also 90 millimeters taller, so quite significantly larger. But you can see the extra sportiness that comes from the sharper lines that you have around the exterior. And in particular, let's start right here at the very front and talk about this grille. Clearly, that's grown in style. It's a new design language to have the hexagonal style with the angular shapes around the outside, but also to connect it through in the center like we've seen on the BMW 8 Series, and the direction that they're heading in also with the M2 competition. In this case, finished with the chrome surround and flanked either side by the laser light headlights. So you get LED as standard, you can upgrade to the adaptive LED or to the laser lights, and they have the signature blue X's inside each of the eyes, the twin eyes on both sides with the distinctive running lights underneath that we're familiar with. In fact, if I just grab the key from my pocket, which we have right here, the display key for the car, and unlock it, we can wake those up and you can see them glowing brightly there, and they increase the range dramatically. In fact, by having the laser lights, you get 500 meters of light range as opposed to the normal 250. But anyway, to continue on the design, down at the bottom of the front, you've got all of the openings for airflow, for cooling, but also to give it presence from the design with the additional lighting you have below. And you can see, in fact, the air curtain here, where air literally goes straight the way through and is directed around the sides of the car. Coming back to the front grille, this is one of the differentiators now between the various models in the BMW lineup. So if we talk just about the X models, the off-roaders, which itself is becoming a growing lineup, you have the X1, the X2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, and also the luxurious, even larger X7. One of the things that changes with the growing size of the vehicle is that the height of the front grille grows as well. So the X7 has a ginormously tall front grille, the X3's is slightly lower. This car has a larger grille than on the previous generation, and that's completely different to, say, the 8 Series, the sportier BMW models, as opposed to the SUVs, where the grilles are getting narrower and wider to accentuate the sportiness. And if you come in closer to this, where you have the vertical bars, between the bars you have these slats. Now, if the car needs additional cooling, those slats open to cool the engine. If it doesn't, they close back up to reduce the drag coefficient. Now coming back around the side, very much the side profile of the X5. You can have the car as a 5-seater or a 7-seater with 2 additional seats for the rear. Otherwise you have a lot of luggage space back there that we'll see shortly. This car is equipped with the 21-inch wheels. All models can be equipped with optional 22-inch wheels should you prefer, including of course the X5 M50d. The blue calipers represent the sport brakes that are fitted. But let's come back towards the rear of the car, where you have the 3D sculpted tail lights, a thing that's becoming common, I suppose, on cars across the market. But I do find the rear angle perhaps the most awkward one of the car. This rear shape doesn't quite do it for me, and if you look down at the rear bumper, the way it protrudes out towards the rear, that's of course due to safety legislation, the additional technology that the car has to house all in. And I find this shape a touch awkward, even though you have those nice trapezoid finishes for the exhaust tailpipe covers. And you also have a dual power fold tailgate, so it opens upwards and the lower section opens down, which is all now electronic for the first time in the model. And you can see this line, the swage line, with the S shape that runs along the side, just giving it more stance at the rear, raising it up and positioning the car like it looks like it's leaning down towards the front. Let's come back around the other side, right-hand drive car here in the UK, and have a quick look at the interior. xDrive, by the way, all models, permanent all-wheel drive, xDrive being BMW's 4-wheel drive system, and of course this is the M Sport, which is why you get the M designation there. But let's have a look in here, where we are greeted in this car by the ivory white interior contrasting against the black paintwork. But this is where the visible side of this car's technology really begins. For example, the dual 12.3-inch digital displays, one for the driver's digital dashboard, the other for the infotainment, the latest 7th generation of the BMW operating system. But let me just take a step in here to quickly introduce some of this technology to you before we come back to more of it later on. And one of the nice touches is to now have the crafted clarity glass gear lever along with the iDrive controller and the start-stop button as well. That's an optional upgrade. You've also got all of your adaptive driving controls down here. The car has adaptive suspension as standard. M adaptive suspension is available on the M50d version. But basically this car has pedestrian collision avoidance, lane guidance assistance, adaptive cruise control. It has their new reverse assistance, so when you put the car into reverse or when you're driving forwards, it remembers where you've gone and can basically automatically control the steering wheel driving 50 meters in reverse. All you have to do is hover over the brake and the car takes control. But let's just start it up. Foot on the brake, hit the button here, and it comes into life. We've got comfort access, the steering wheel moves. You can see we've got this large interface which you can configure in so many ways up here. We can press back home, you've got the tiles, but you can change the look and the appearance and the style and the different information that you have and how it all operates. Then you have the button here to get to a lot of that technology, the intelligent safety, where you can configure individual. And just get a small look at what we've got here. The collision warnings, it will detect stop signs, pedestrians, things coming from the side, so if a car is potentially going to be driving at you from the side, it will pick them up. Steering intervention if you're drifting out of your lanes, give way warnings, it does everything. It also has the gesture control, so with your hand you could wave away a phone call, you could do next track and last track, you can raise and lower the volume, you can do a lot of interactions through some sensors from the roof that are detecting what you do, which is great because you don't have to take your eyes off the road, you can just wave your hand around in the air. You've got a little digital display here for your climate control, that looks very nice, upgraded as opposed to the non-colour displays that the cars had before. You've got heated and cooled cup holders for the first time I think in a BMW, access to USB ports everywhere, even USB-C ports available just in here for charging the latest devices. We can have a quick look at the interior and the amount of space back there, but we'll fully explore all of this in more detail later on. For now though, let's hop on out in a car, not this one, I'm going to leave this here, and go and see what it is like. As it happens, this car is the exact same specification as the one that I was just filming with, so let me get this started up. Need to get myself comfortable. Of course, we've got the heated electric memory seats, which is all standard in the X5. We've also got an electric steering column, so I can get all of this into place. You obviously have a high up seating position. We're surrounded here by a number of the cars, which is quite nice, but just move all of the mirrors, get myself set. So then, to drive and experience this, let's head out onto some of the local roads around Goodwood. We've got the 8-speed automatic gearbox, and off we go. To be honest, it's reasonably quiet in here. You can hear the diesel engine naturally. The steering is very light, so you have the option for the active steering, which will give you the rear wheel steering, 4-wheel steer, which just makes maneuverability at low speed even easier, stability at high speed even easier as well, and more reassuring. But let's head straight on out and see what it's like. I tell you what you do notice is how large the car is. It is not a small thing when you're going along British countryside roads. It does drive along fairly well. As you can imagine, you have this adaptive suspension as standard. You can also upgrade it even further should you wish, and it gives a lot of range of travel depending on the different modes. So you can have the xOffroad that we're going to be discovering later on. And then in the 50D as well, that we'll also check out, you have the M suspension as standard, and you can upgrade to the M Sport Professional above that should you wish to. Basically a firmer ride, more of a dynamic driving experience, whereas this is about more wafting along, particularly on these roads which have a number of bumps and undulations in them, just letting the car do its thing in complete automatic mode. Now there are a number of things you can change. So for example, we can pop it up into the sportier mode. You get a display, the gearbox drop to gear, you get a bit more sound that's piped into the cabin through the speakers. But I tell you what, with the M Sports exhaust system, for a diesel engined car outside, it actually sounded pretty good. When I've been filming the intros and I've been listening to cars driving off, I've been really pleasantly surprised by how good the car sounds. You can also put it into Eco Pro, which changes the dashboard, so it would no longer give you a rev counter, it would give you a fuel economy counter instead, just to let you know, and I suppose prompt you towards driving economically. And then you could also put it into adaptive if you would prefer, which basically tells the car to work out as you're driving what you're doing. So if, for example, you turn the steering wheel aggressively with a stab of the throttle pedal, then it's going to know you want a dynamic driving experience, and it works out. If, however, you're driving gently and being super soft on the pedals, it will calculate that that's what you're going for instead. So while you're driving along, you have easy access to a number of controls on the steering wheel. For example, all your adaptive cruise control and the limiter on the left-hand side, and then your media is controlled through the right. And the multifunction steering wheel is actually standard as well on the car. Quite a chunky, small steering wheel, which gives you that sports feel. Again, BMW, the ultimate driving machine. It's often been about the driving experience. You have technology, for example, right in front of me, like the drowsiness sensor, where the car will detect if you start to nod off or feel a little bit sleepy and prompt you to take a break and give you a warning, for example. So lots of these things are neatly integrated into what the car has available. You don't necessarily know that it's all there other than the displays, which integrate quite seamlessly between the two that you have here. But it's all happening in the background to make sure that you're safe. For example, the car is connected. You have access to connected services as standard. In fact, in all BMWs, you have a number of things. The SOS functionality, for example, if you have an incident, the car will call the emergency services for you and check that they can actually communicate with you on a helpline. So if your airbag has gone off, you're going to get attention as quickly as possible, which is a really, really beneficial feature to have in these kind of cars should the worst ever happen. Lots of other connected features. For example, if you want to get help to set the navigation to a destination, if you want apps to be running, download new apps. In fact, the car has over-the-air updates to the electronics, to the infotainment, to the software side of things, so you don't even need to do anything particularly fancy other than wait until there's an update out, hit go, and it will do the update. Anyway, let's drop a gear here, kick down. Took a moment or two just to think about things, but I guess that's because we're in adaptive. I haven't necessarily told it what I want to do here. If we pop it into sport mode, push the gearbox to the left into sport as well, and just drop some gears to use some of the revs up to 5,000 RPM. Not going to pretend this is quick. It's a 30D. There's a lot of torque available, but it did take a while to pick up some power. So I'm going to pop it back actually into drive. Very easy to chop and change and have it depending how you'd like it. Let's put it into comfort mode, back to normal. As we cruise through, and you have this great display in front of you. I'm a big fan of this digital dashboard. Speedometer at the left, the navigation screen in the center, just really smart, nicely done. They took a while to bring in these full digital screens into BMW models, but now that they've done it, it's come across in a very, very, very good way. Anyway, let's I think spin around and head back towards some off-roading. You know what? I think I might have been a little bit unfair on this. We've got 265 horsepower, and it's definitely not underpowered. It's quick enough for normal, everyday tasks. You know, if you want that dynamic drive, you're going to go for the M50d. This, however, picks up plentiful torque, just gets on the move. And you know, these cars are going to be used for all sorts of things, whether it's the school run with the kids, whether it's taking an entire family and luggage on a ski trip down to the mountains, whether it's moving house and chucking everything in the back. We'll talk more about the luggage space and how all of the functionality back there works. But I guess most of the time it's going to be driven in drive, maybe in adaptive mode, maybe even in Eco Pro, that kind of normal daily grind, just regular usage. kind of like this. But anyway, as I said, we're heading back towards Goodwood. From the road to something a little bit gnarlier. We're taking the car for some gentle off-roading at the moment, although as you will see from how it is currently perching, we are, well, a wheel up in the air here, and the white car that I'm now driving is significantly dirtier than it started. But let me just jump in to show you the xOffroad modes that we have in here. Take a step back inside this car. We're currently in the rocks mode, which is actually the highest suspension mode that you can have for the car. So on this central screen you can see these different modes. You have the ride height, so you can go 40 millimeters higher or 40 millimeters lower from standard, 80 millimeters range in total. That's controlled through this toggle that you have here, or using this one you can go through the different driving modes. So it won't let me change these while we're parked at this angle, but you can see you've got the rocks, the sand, the gravel and the snow mode. But there is a path up here, so let's continue on and have some fun. Now, as we make our way through this pretty gnarly terrain, you need to have some decent off-road clearance to be able to actually make it up here. Depending on your different driving mode, it changes a number of different aspects. So for example, the throttle response. If you're on different terrain, you need a different response feel. It will change the gearing and how early it will short shift. So if you're on snow, it will go up a gear quicker, which just gives you a little bit more grip, more torque. And you can go through those different modes relatively easily with the toggle in the center console. And of course, at the moment, we're running in the full ride height. So you saw when I was outside the car how the rear wheel was right up into the arches and the front wheel was kind of hanging loose while it was floating. But I mean, we're off-roading quietly and comfortably, hey? So let's continue. We've got a few different types of terrain up ahead of us. See what it's all about. There is another pretty gnarly bit here, but one thing you can do is turn on the off-road cam, which literally shows you what's going on right in front of you. And if you get to an obstacle, say if you're going through some shrubbery or something, it would snap automatically to where the sensors are going off, so it'd give you the best view. But it has to be said that this is some pretty rough ground that we are just waltzing over as if it's nothing. I mean, right now it's a bit smoother, but it's still very quiet inside here. And although this isn't, I guess, full hardcore off-roading, it is showing a small sense of how easily it can go about doing this as we head up the hill and just make our way through it. When you then get back out onto a normal road, when you reach 20 miles per hour, it'll actually go out of the xOffroad mode and back into a normal mode. We've got the normal display back, so you can see the suspension is actually lowering it. Or I could put it into sport mode or something if I wanted now, and everything will settle down just a touch. So when you go into sport, of course, the suspension would be lower than the normal setting. Or you could also use this, by the way, if you're loading up the boot. So you could lower the suspension to the bottom setting just so you don't have to lift things quite as high to get them in. But now we're back on some normal terrain before we head towards the woods. Now this is starting to look a little bit interesting as we come past the piles of logs. I always love getting a photo of cars next to logs, it always looks really cool. But for this road, we're going to pop the car now into gravel mode, so you can swap it backwards and forwards between the different views on the screen. But we'll head on down through here, and it's just started raining quite a bit actually as well, which is perfect for seeing if we can get the car stuck and a bit lost, but hopefully that's not going to happen. As appealing as this bit of road right in front of us looks, we are going to head now around this way, where it should get a little bit gnarlier, and we can try out hill descent control. We're going down here. So hill descent control is a bit like cruise control, except it keeps you at a fixed speed while you're going down a steep surface, so you don't need to worry about the car picking up speed with the gravity and momentum, and it will lock the wheels depending on the terrain as well. So we're still in the gravel mode. We've got the hill descent control button right here, which when you press it will automatically work, and then you can control the speed that you're actually going at using the toggle on the steering wheel that's otherwise doing cruise control. So you can literally go up and down with that, and it shows you down on the speedometer exactly what's going on. I can still use the accelerator or the brake to go a little bit quicker, and I can feel it's a little bit slippy here right now as we get towards the steeper section of the hill. There we go, brakes doing their thing, slowing us down on the mud. This is very, very muddy, so let's put it for about 4 miles per hour down here, because it is really quite mucky. Okay, here we go. You can hear the noise of the brakes locking themselves up to adjust what's going on as another car emerges, actually heading uphill on the other side. So for now, just letting the car do it. I'm not touching the brakes at all, or the throttle. Oh, whole car falling out into the rut there. And then the camera system loading up to show us the angle that's currently causing a problem. So we descend down towards the bottom. This is really sloppy right now. Going up the hill then, and of course with quite how slippy this is where it's fun that the car just can pick up and actually do it without breaking a sweat. I mean, literally we are just driving straight up the hill almost as if it's normal terrain, but of course it is substantially not. One thing to point out about what we're doing right now is that we actually have the road spec 22-inch wheels, low profile tyres, and we're doing this. You could of course opt, or if you have the 30D, it starts with 18-inch wheels, so we're 4 inches larger than the standard ones, and yet that doesn't seem to be causing a problem. This is where it's starting to get a bit gnarlier. I need to keep some momentum to get up here, up the hill. The back is slipping around, and are we gonna make it up? The car is lifting us, keep the power in. And we've made it. Wow, that was really testing the car in that amount of slippery mess, and we made it to the top, just. The weather has just got incredibly grim, but quickly you can see how dirty we have now made the car. As I said, sitting on the road wheels, the large road wheels, normal road tyres. It's not even on off-roading tyres in any form, but hey, it was fun to take the white car for the purpose. Anyway, I'm going to go and try and find an M50d now to discover what the most powerful current model in the range is like. Take a listen to the weather. It's not ideal anymore. So I'm now in the M50d. I wasn't really going to be able to film the car from the outside with quite how heavy the rainfall is, and also, as you can see, it's getting quite dark even though it's just gone 3 o'clock. But this is now proper rain, I think we can say. Anywho, this car, of course, still the 4-wheel drive, but in here, with the 3-litre diesel, you now have 4 turbochargers. It's a quad turbo engine. We've got about 381 PS, that's 375 brake horsepower, but also 760 Newton meters. Those are some pretty big numbers for this kind of car. 760 Newton meters is a whole lot of torque. That means 0 to 62 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. Goodness, this weather is not good. The 0 to 62 sprint is 5.2 seconds, and it'll go on to a top speed, limited, electronically limited at 155 miles an hour, which is 250 kilometers per hour. And this is now appalling. Well, we are in the right car for it, I suppose. If we were going to be driving in this kind of environment, you wouldn't want to be in a silly, powerful rear-wheel drive supercar, should we just say right now? We've also got some fog coming over. So, what can I tell you about the car then? Of course, you have, in this case, very highly equipped cars. This car in the UK starts at just over £70,000, £71,500. As it's spec'd for this example, it's about £85,000. The base entry model, the 30D, starts at £57,500, and then you have a £3,500 uplift to the M Sport version, and then the 40i, that is the third model that's been launched initially, is just a touch more expensive than the diesel, but not much, just a couple of £1,000s in it. So here we're talking about an £85,000 car, loaded up with all the equipment, the active rear steer, all the safety systems, the adaptive sensors, all the different options that you can have, and yeah, we're just cruising along at the moment in the default kind of settings as it is when you turn it on. Gentle, normal driving. I could pop it up to sport, maybe I will, but just be very sensible and aware of what's going on. So we've got the upgraded brakes in here too. Maybe we'll drop a gear, go into the manual mode. You get a decent amount of sound coming through the cabin into here. Can't complain about that at all, but this is definitely 4-wheel drive territory, this kind of weather today. So let's pop it back into automatic and let the thing cruise along again. We've got the assistant settings actually turned off at the moment, so you can configure it individually if you don't want certain things on, if those irritate you. Of course, things like the automatic main beam headlights, the automatic wake wipers, this stuff is all standard equipment. In fact, the standard equipment in here is really quite high. There is an exclusive wheel option that's available for the M50d, and I think it's safe to assume that the future will hold an X5M, a petrol engine, maybe the 4.4 V8, that will be, you know, the noisy brute, shall we say, and then no doubt the X5 will spawn the X6, which will be the sportier with the sloped rear roofline heading towards the back as the different body styles. So you have in the X models the different coupe-like versions, the X4 based on the X3, for example. However, it's a little bit drier here. Half a kilometre away from Goodwood, maybe half a mile I should say, after all we are in the UK. We're back into the national speed limit. Obviously power straight down to the ground, no loss of traction. You can send a disproportionate amount of power just to one wheel. So when we're off-roading, it helps the car an awful lot by adjusting that and sending it all, you know, to that specific wheel electronically, as opposed to having to brake wheels, or depending what it needs to do behind the scenes with the 4-wheel drive system.
In terms of the dashboard, you can't change things too much, not like some manufacturers where you can configure just about everything. You basically keep it in your one main mode and let everything else happen automatically. I've got a head-up display with lots of information as well, and that's obviously feeding me data up in front of me and the navigation and settings and what's going on. But basically the same on the interior, to be honest. There's not really that much to tell the two cars apart. We've got the optional exhaust system here, the M Sport exhaust, which is noticeably a touch up on the standard exhaust system. But basically, highly equipped car, and one that I think goes about its purpose very well. Of course, the off-roading we've been doing is probably beyond what most cars like this will actually do out in the real world, but interesting to see that it's capable of doing that. Interesting feel with the turbos. Of course, you get a lot up towards the top end. Short amount of time between each gear shift. The ratios are quite close, I would say, but normal driving, right? You're meant to be driving a car like this typically in automatic as opposed to the way I'm driving it. So I've still got it in sport mode. You can go back to comfort, or let's just pop it into Eco Pro, which completely changes the feel. Yeah, you have to give a lot of press on the throttle pedal to get any power out of it, particularly going uphill, basically to encourage you to conserve your fuel economy. It really doesn't give you much unless you go very firm down on the throttle pedal. We have the crafted clarity gear lever amongst other options inside here, but this car doesn't have any of the off-roading. Well, I guess it doesn't make sense for driving it on the road, so we don't have the different off-road modes and the hill descent control and that side of things. But basically, everything works pretty well. The dashboard display is easy and clear to read. The navigation system is easy to interact with and work out what you want it to do. If you need to load up any of the different controls, for example, bring up the cameras, you just hit a button and it would load it up. I think you have to be going a touch slower to be able to do that. You can't obviously look at cameras while you're driving at a decent speed. But I will try the reversing assist actually when we get back, so I can give a demo of how that works. But I'm not going to lie, this weather has taken a gigantic turn for the worse. I'm just glad I'm inside here, even with the Sky Lounge roof, with the panoramic glass roof up above us, which makes it feel very airy in here. In fact, they refer to it as the glass house effect because the windows are very large, the pillars are very small, gives you good visibility even though the car itself is quite large. So you can see a fair amount around and just have a feeling of openness, which of course you can close back up at the touch of a button should you prefer as well. Anyway, let's head back and see if this dries out at all. Here in the car park, I'm going to demonstrate the reversing assist to you. So the way that this works is the car is always monitoring where you're driving and it will remember the last 50 meters or so of where you've traveled. So for example, here in front of me, I'm going to make my life complicated by taking a twisty route through the little paths that we have here. So the car is going to be remembering exactly, I guess, the inputs that we're making, so that when I activate the reverse assist, it can take us backwards without any effort along this same route. So for example, let me just come around one more little bit here and come to a stop. So just come to a stop, pop the car into reverse, then we turn on the reversing assistant. You can see it's activated with the green lights here. Now all I have to do is control the brake and sit back and let the car do its thing. So we are on a slight hill, so it will need a tiny bit of throttle to kick things off, and you can see the steering wheel is doing the reverse of what we did. So in theory, and obviously always keep your wits about you, it's going to take us on the exact route opposite to the way I drove, and you should always keep the speed down doing this, keep the hover over the brake. Yep, so far so good. It is a strange sensation, but you can see the reality of when you would want to do this. If you're maneuvering in a car park, or you need to get back down a country lane to find a lay-by to pull back into, you don't need to worry about the reversing element because the car does it. And it will go back, as you can see, even further from where we are now. I only wanted to really go back this way, but now that I'm doing it, we might as well go a bit further, and then it will alert us to the fact that we're coming towards the end of its range. And there we go, it's stopped. So this is where you have to take over and it flashes up red on the steering wheel. So that is the reversing assistant in a nutshell. It's very easy, hey? You also have, by the way, the park assist. So if you were parking, this would make it look for other parking spaces and then self-park as well. So let's head back, park up, and it looks like the rain's subsided for a couple of minutes so we can take a look around the car. Back here with the cars, let me demonstrate now the self-parking. So you would turn on the park assist here, and then right on our left, we're going to have a parallel parking bay. So you drive past, the car is now hunting spaces. So I think it will spot this one after we go past it. So now it should pop up knowing that the space is here. There we go. So So to park, select a space. It automatically turns the lights on, turns on the indicator. Now you don't even need to put it in reverse or anything. This is literally just down to releasing the brake. The car is going to do it all. It's going to steer us into the bay. It needs about the length of the car plus a meter or so. I'm just feathering the brake to make sure that it's all safe and in control. This is always slightly nerve-wracking. It's braking, not me. It's controlling that. Now it's going to send us forwards, turning the wheel full lock the other way. This is all the car. Getting nervous? Nope, it's got it. The car does the entire process for you. These systems, done. Now it's going to take us forwards a touch. There we go. Finished. Back in park. These systems make life really, really, really easy. You have to get in the mentality of using the reverse assist or the park assist, but when you have that switched on, why would you ever not use it? It just makes life so spectacularly easy to do. Really cool. Before I hop out and brave the rain again, let's have a better look around the interior. Of course, we had a quick glance earlier, but there's a lot more to show you. And now that it's getting a touch darker, you can also see we have the ambient lighting here in the dashboard. You'd also get these parts illuminated should you wish to. But the displays are all very bright, very clear, very high resolution, particularly this central display with all the things you can do and control through here. And I rather like that new display they have for the climate control right underneath it. But this system is very responsive. Of course, we've got the cameras up at the moment and the access to quick controls that you can have there. You have a button here to turn off the cameras directly should you wish, or to change the view, so you can see the camera at the front. Of course, also a camera at the rear and other cameras sitting underneath the door mirrors, which is what gives you the 360 surround view. But then here you'd press back on home, for example, and it takes you to that main screen where you can either press these tiles to jump straight into them, or they were saying, like, you know, on a mobile phone you can configure it to have different apps, different display screens, different views. You can change everything, and it's all very kind of interactive, as you'd kind of imagine. Behaves in many different ways. So jump into the digital radio, you can have connected music as well, your phone settings, you can bring down hotkeys from the very top, you can jump into the main sections of the menu here at the left. So from the car you can go to driving information, vehicle status, see the various elements from that side. Basically you have access to a lot of info very, very quickly, and I really, really do like this. You can have up to 10 pages with 4 tiles maximum on each page, so you can have a lot of apps or things saved here. And like I said earlier, it's all connected to the air, so you can download new apps in the future, new functionality. It just saw me moving my hand around, that was the gesture control being picked up. And then here you have access to configure the assistance systems that you'd have set on the car. And talking about that, let me just grab this that we have right here, which is the spec sheet for this car, just so you can have a quick look at what's on here. We've got the visibility package, the technology package, integral active steering, the suspension professional, acoustic glazing, the sky lounge, sun protection glass, comfort seats, crafted clarity. You can see we've got lots of nice things on here, all the tech, coming to a total price on the back of £84,920, so about $85,000 in total. Climate control. So here you've got these hotkeys, so when you lightly touch on these, it actually brings up on the top of the screen where you are, so you can see, and then you can press them to actually select. For example, go into X view here, where it loads up in this case the degrees of rake that you have, the percentage incline, the direction you're facing in, and your altitude. So that's quite just a nice display to bring up. Then continuing further down, here you have your hot and cold cup holders. Here we've got the display key, so this lets you have access to lots of bits of information. I'll jump out with that in a second when we're outside the car. Down here you've got the wireless charging pad, cigarette socket, your cup holders. Then you have all the controls, the hotkeys for the infotainment. You can write on top of the crafted clarity, iDrive toggle. The X that's displayed inside there actually looks quite cool depending on the angle that you're actually looking at it. Some hotkeys for the driving dynamics side of things, and then your rather large armrest, lots of storage in here, USB-C port. That all works, I mean, more or less as you would expect it to. Then over on the dashboard, of course, here you've got a lot of information. The speedometer around the left, the rev counter around the right, fuel gauge down here, a bit of trip information along the bottom, but then this neat integration of the navigation map, which is very, very smooth. If you have cruise control on, for example, that displays over the top on the left. I'm just see if I can turn that on. I don't think you probably can while you're driving. Yeah, there we go, assisted steering, for example. You can see how all of that has been made to look very smooth and seamless. Coming back to the steering wheel, that's through those controls. You've got the paddles on the back for the automatic gearbox, some media controls on the right, and you can potentially also here see the head-up display in front of me with the other X5 out there.
But again, quite a lot of information available to you on that. And then at the bottom of the steering wheel, your heated steering wheel button too. Over to the right side, your light controls, your window controls, mirror controls, your seat controls, so you can move the passenger side seat as well from the driver. I'm actually, just for the moment, going to switch the car off and take a step out. You can see X5 M50d written up at the top, because I want to show you in the rear and also in the boot at the luggage space we've got back there. Just quickly before we do, there's a decent amount of storage in the door pockets, so you can fit a bottle in here and more things in the back part as well. You can also see this is now illuminated as well. But let me step out of the car where you have the light curtain, so you can actually see that because of the way it's dark now. This is projected out from underneath the car, basically a very advanced form of puddle light that you have on the car. It's an option to have that, but gives you a good view of what's on the ground as you're stepping in. Then in the rear, good space back here, 40-20-40 folding rear seats. Oh, plenty of space, plenty of headroom, as you can imagine. Absolutely no shorter. I've got like a good 15 centimeters above me or something, and a great view through the panoramic roof, or it would be a great view if it wasn't currently covered in raindrops. Alas, c'est la vie. Then down here, the dual zone climate control for the rear, some more storage areas, generally good availability. And look here, you've got a USB-C port on the back of the seat as well. And then, not quite sure exactly what that is, but you can plug in to charge up there. Air vent out on the B pillar of the car as well, and even the lighting currently illuminated on the sides as well. Open up the armrest, storage bucket, cup holders, all as expected. So, step back out from there, lots of room, has to be said, in the back of the car. Now for the boot, a number of ways you can open the boot of the car. You can either use the key, or you can pull the button, which is obviously quite dirty right now, or if your hands were full, you can wave your leg around underneath and it should detect and open up, although it hasn't done, so I haven't done it quite right. But let's just press the button so that you can see a demo of this opening up there. Then you have this button to open the lower tailgate part as well. Now this is where you have a number of other things. So you have the levers here, which will fold down the seats directly. You have this electric piece that, well, if you had it, you could have the electric cover that would fold back in. That's not equipped on this car itself. There's a small area of storage underneath there, but of course this keeps the boot floor completely flat. You could fold just down the center if you want to put some skis or something through the back, but basically pretty decent amount of luggage space back here. This is 650 litres. If you fold down all the seats, it's about 1,870 litres in total, so plenty of storage space available. And then if you close it up, it does both parts at the same time and shuts up shop for us. So a very dirty M50d here, but you can tell the light is dropping. We've pretty much explored, I think, everything about this car today. Had a good look at the 30D, gone off-road with it, soft off-roading I think we could call it, and then now had an experience with the more powerful version. So I hope that's answered just about every question you could have with this car. So thank you very much as always for watching, guys. That's it for this time with the Tech Fest that is the new BMW X5. I'll see you again very soon. Thanks for watching. Cheers.